Hey, it's Aaron, the metal theologian. So I'm just kind of hanging out listening to my 45s. Literally just decided to like pull out the metal ones and start A to Z. And actually it's kind of funny because it's kind of a big one right here, and I swear I didn't plan it this way. But I just got to the B's. And I'm actually at this point where this box is like pretty tight. So I kind of have to expand it into 2 boxes or something like that. So to get to the early ones, like I had to pull out all my A's so I get to the B's, right? So you know what that means this is right here? You see that gap right there? That's my A hole. You get it? Alright, so seriously. Yeah, I just been thinking about these fucking things. I figured it's time. I haven't sat down and just listened to them all the way through. Maybe ever. So we'll see how far I actually get with this shit. I think about doing it with the LPs. I never do it, but I made it through the A's. And so I was going through trying to find like a little like funny video to have in the background. And I was kind of struck by something, man. I criticize this kind of shit kind of a lot, but check this shit out, man. You see this video right here, this Ruthless Metal one? Fuck. 42,000 views. Who invented heavy metal? Metal documentary. Alright, we're gonna put a little Binding of Isaac stream in the background, just fucking entertainment. But dude, that's a dumb question. It's not the sort of question you can answer. You can talk about who might have been an influence on who and whoever, but I think it's a really weird phenomenon that people get so hung up on, like, who invented this. I actually think it's kind of a, well, I mean, I'm talking out of my ass, but I wonder if it's like sort of a symptom of the whole sort of like great men approach we tend to have towards history. You know what I mean? It tends to be written less about sort of peoples and cultures and movements and that than like individuals who did important things, you know? And I mean, that's important shit, but it's not always relevant when it comes to something like who invented heavy metal. The answer is everyone and no one. You know what I mean? I mean, they're okay, maybe not everyone. Henry Gross probably had nothing to do with inventing heavy metal. Although, you know, I say that, I think of Bob James's free jazz record. And you listen to 70s Bob James and you don't think free jazz, but he tried. I mean, I don't think his free jazz shit is very good, but, you know, maybe Bob James did have a hand in inventing, not heavy metal, but free jazz. Anyway, the point is, man, and I feel like this is apropos because I'm about to talk about a bunch of 70s metal records here, right? What constitutes metal at the end of the day is what you like. You know what I mean? More than that, because I would point at you and say that is not a fucking metal record. You know what I mean? There are always going to be certain sort of parameters and certain boundaries, but they're never going to be cut and dry. You know what I mean? And you're never going to be able to say, yes, this is the guy. You know what I mean? You can say, oh yeah, Steppenwolf, they were the first ones to say heavy metal thunder in that fucking song. So they must have come up with it, right? But they copied it from William Burroughs. But William Burroughs wasn't talking about fucking music at all. He was talking about drugs, which is pretty much all that William Burroughs talked about. So it's a fool's errand, man. You're kind of wasting your time, you know what I mean? So like, if you're one of those people who gets bent out of shape about that sort of thing, I'd advise you not to. Just say fucking. Just say either you like it or you don't. You know what I mean? I mean, shit, if I wanted to agonize about this, I was just fucking waxing, lyrical about this record the other day. This is barely a heavy metal record, man. I'm going to file it over in metal because that's where I'm going to look for it if I go looking for it. And in fact, one thing I've kind of found with my collection is that I always gravitate towards the hard stuff, right? So it's like, my collection has kind of gotten to a point where if I'm looking for hard stuff from the 80s, then I'm going to look in the metal section. You know what I mean? From the 80s, early 90s, or anything that is very clearly imitating that. So like the new wave of traditional heavy metal stuff, right? That's going to be over there. If I'm looking for like this, that's going to be in the 70s section. Is this a metal album? By 70s standards, yeah, it pretty much is. Really, pretty unequivocally. It's a heavy band. It's very rockin', dark themes, and has all the trappings and all the great shit you want, you know? So, Yeah, so that'll be in the 70s section, but that's still my metal, right? Now I got all the stoner doom shit, right? Which is like, I mean 90s, but most of what I've gotten has been 2000, even 2010 and newer. So where's most of that shit? It's over in my alternative section, you know what I mean? So it's hanging out with the fucking Sons of Arca records and shit. But at the end of the day, if I'm looking for a sound that kind of comes out of that sort of an era, that's where I'm going to reach for it, you know? So what's my point here? I don't really have a point because it's all completely arbitrary. But if you make a video called "Who Invented Heavy Metal" and you're actually trying to like establish who invented heavy metal, I'll probably be polite to you, but I'll probably be laughing at myself a little bit. Just being honest. Fuck, I didn't get a drink. I started a video, I didn't get a fucking drink. So I'm all spazzed out. So whatever, we'll just talk about this shit. Okay, so like I said, I kind of teased this, 70s 2-record sets, and I don't have a whole shit ton of them here, but I have a few that I want to talk about. But I do sort of want to follow on from a couple things, and a couple of, well, something, just a public service announcement, and then illustration of a point, okay? Public service announcement is this just came out. I've been keeping an eye out for this for a while because it's considered by people other than me to be a classic record, and I'd never heard it before, straight up. So I wanted to hear Exhorder, and the good folks at Music on Vinyl did a beautiful reissue of this. There probably aren't a ton of them, but this thing sounds great, and as of right now, it's a lot cheaper than an original, so just so you know it's out there, man. Like, the iron is hot. If you're in the market for Exhorder, strike now. Unless you're a big enough fan that you're willing to pay the money for an original, in which case, that's fine. There are things I would pay that for too. They're just not one of them. For my part, I like that record a lot. It's a very solid, sort of like end of the road of thrash metal type of record. You know what I mean? Like, the next step was going to be into death metal, and that's kind of right where they are. I had sort of heard of the idea about these guys that I'd heard a lot of comparisons with Pantera, and frankly, by the time this thing was on its way, I was afraid. I was like, oh shit. Is this gonna sound like some of that jock metal bullshit, like fucking Cowboys from Hell, or what's that other fucking record called with the fucking guy getting punched and shit? That fucking, I hate that shit, man. Well, no, I really do hate it, man. Pantera sucks, dude. I like their glam records, they're fun glam records, but their important records are shit. Exhorder doesn't sound like that. Exhorder actually sounds like a legit metal band and not like a precursor to Korn and Limp Bizkit, which is what Pantera really was. So while I'm shitting on things that aren't Exhorder, I make a big deal out of how you have to dig into like the nooks and crannies and the 45s and the comps to get the good new wave British heavy metal records. I just pulled this one out because I felt like hearing SS Gyro, and I've owned this record for a good 20 years. Played it a lot of times over the years. Really wanted to like it. I mean, look at that cover, dude. That cover's a 10 out of 10. It's funny, like in contrast with that Pantera one, if you want to have someone punching someone, that's the way to do it. Not like the way they did it, where it's all like fucking high tech and they're trying to be like, oh my god, we're so fucking, you know what I mean? This is like, yeah, we're fists and we're back with a vengeance. Anyway, maybe that's a little bit hypocritical. Point is, man, this record is a very solid 5 out of 10. Maybe a 6 on a forgiving day, but it's a very solid 5 out of 10. And I'll tell you, man, that's an early neat record. It came out in 1981. Fist is kind of arguably an important name in that, but the LP just isn't that great, man. They made a couple 45s. 45s are fantastic. Well, most of them. I don't know. I could do without the Wanderer. But what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that there were a lot of great bands out there who, if you ask me, just didn't really have an album in them. They had a couple great 45s in them, but they didn't have a good full length. And if you really want to see, this is next, if you really want to see more of that sort of thing, the CD era was chock full of it. I mean, I don't know how many 70-minute CDs came out in the early 90s that would have been great 40-minute LPs, but they had to fill up all that space that they had on the CD. So instead of writing a regular size, 35 to 40-minute great record, they wrote a 70-minute mediocre record, And what are you going to do with that? I mean, it's fucking mediocrity is what it is. It sucks. It's kind of a bummer, There's a reason why I'll sit here and make a whole video talking about a shitty record, but I can't really be bothered talking about a mediocre record. Honestly, dude, Sunset? It was funny, this kind of became a little bit of a thing in the comments, but this is really kind of a shitty record, okay? By my criteria, this is a shitty record. I like it anyway, and I'll tell you why I like it, but I'll also tell you why it's shitty. If it were just mediocre, yawner, man. I can't be bothered. I'm not going to come on here and show you mediocre record. Well, I might show you mediocre record. Yeah. So anyway, let's talk about the 70s. And we're going to keep listening to 45s. This does have the insert, by the way. You want to see the insert in this? It's a really cool piece. It's just not a great record, you know? There's that classic neat label. Like, I feel a little bit guilty holding back on this thing because it's a cool piece. It's just not a great album, man. Here's the insert, though. I haven't looked at this in a long time. There you go, man. Fucking Fist. With Glenn Coates in the band. Fresh from Hollow Ground, which was frankly a much better band than Fist. But they also recorded less. You know what I mean? Hollow Ground had like, what, maybe 6 real songs in their discography. Even that double that High Roller put out with had like all the shit that they ever did. A lot of that stuff was kind of lame, man. Like the best shit on that was easily the songs on Rock Snacks on the 45, you know? It's like you listen to those and you're like, why'd they reuse 2 songs from Rock Snacks on the 45? Didn't they have anything else in the can? Well, they did have other shit in the can. It just wasn't that good, you know? So anyway, where am I going to put this? That's getting put away as soon as we're done. Alright, so there's the whole phenomenon of like the 2 LP set in, that was kind of a big part of the 70s, you know what I mean? And I've kind of gone back and forth a little bit over the course of my life. Like when I was first starting to get into music, and in fact, this is kind of the cornerstone. And if you ask me, it's one of the bookends too. But I got this when I was like 12 or something. Completely blew me away. Incidentally, I just bought this in the wild, but it would appear to be signed in ballpoint pen. Like that looks like Roger Glover's signature. Ian Gillan right there. See that? Pacey right there, Ian Pace. And I think the last one is Richie Blackmore, but I'm not quite sure. But this is like really, I mean, this is a fucking heavy record, but it still manages to be psychedelic and out there and like goes through all these avenues. Like it does all the shit that prog rock says it does, but it does it without sacrificing heaviness and rhythm and drive. It just keeps going on and fucking on. I mean, I think the drum pattern on the Mule is one of the greatest drum patterns ever written for a fucking song, like ever. And it's a testament to Ian Pace, who's an underrated drummer, if you ask me. But yeah, so it's like this is the one, in a way this exemplifies it. It has the big songs on it. It has 7 songs over 4 LP sides. So lots of stretching out, lots of soloing, lots of the bombast, and lots of the shit that would be so over the top that it might just be fucking tedious if it weren't such a great band as Deep Purple, you know? So for me, the bookend sort of at the other end of the 70s is really this one. I'd probably reach for this one more these days, but that's because I haven't been a UFO fan anywhere near as long as I've been a Deep Purple fan. But, like, in a way, this was kind of the shit that, like, Deep Purple was starting to do, but, like, it's come around the other end. It's sort of fully realized here. The songs are shortened back down some. It still has the flash, but they had the good taste that even with Michael Schenker in there, they weren't, like, it wasn't all flash, you know what I mean? They didn't turn into, well, I'll tell you, I was going to say they didn't turn into like a Ted Nugent, but the fact is, I was going to say some nice things about this record too, because the fact is, this is pretty much everything you want in a 70s double live too, you know what I mean? It has some like bullshit talk, has a lot of stretching out and a lot of solos, and it has some really good songs, you know what I mean? I mean, in a way, the biggest testament to this is that, what song is it? Fucking, it's not as stretched out as Made in Japan, right? But it's one of the songs is a whole side. I want to say it's the one about the buffalo, but I don't know the fucking song titles as well as I ought to, because I'm relatively new to Ted Nugent. Because he kept me away. You know, I don't think I need to explain that, most likely. But all that by way of saying, it has it. It has the songs, it has the attitude, it has the flash, and it doesn't, and it moves. It doesn't really overstay its welcome. You know what I mean? Which, I don't know if I'd say any of these records here overstay their welcome. It's more that they accomplish what they set out to do in different ways. Okay, so this one is almost like, you know, there's a cliche about the Double Live record being sort of the close of an era. And that's probably true in, I don't know about the Nugent one, but probably just about every other one here. Okay, this is definitely the end of the Schenker era with UFO, right? This is really the end of the classic era with the classic Deep Purple lineup. They made one more studio record after this, Who Do We Think We Are? But that record really kind of sucks. I don't care what anyone says, man. And I'm sorry, like fucking Super Trooper is not good. You know, and so this record was tremendous, and it kind of closed it off. But yeah, so we have one early one, a late one, and a middle one. So let's just pull out a couple others. Okay, let's talk about this one. This wouldn't be a full video if I didn't mention this one, because this might be the defining double of the 70s. That's this one. You know what I mean? It's funny because I ended up with 4 copies of this through circumstances, and I ended up sending one of them to Mikey Bananas. And so to this day, like when it comes up here and there, it's like, oh yeah, Aaron turned him on to Kiss, you know? It's like, I'm really not much of a Kiss fan. I mean, I like Kiss. I went on a big Kiss kick just a few months ago, you know what I mean? So I dig Kiss, you know? But given how fanatical some people are, man, that is definitely not me. Like, I'll sit here and say, yeah, man, I've learned to love Creatures of the Night, and this is a great record. I can't argue with it. I could sit down and listen to this all the way through as well as I know the songs and still enjoy it. But you're not going to see me on here talking about how The Elder is really better than you think it is. You know what I mean? Or how there's this little nugget buried inside, too, of Animalize. It's like, no, dude, there are other channels for that shit. You know what I mean? So, yeah. In a way, this is a kind of an anonymous one. And really the reason to bring up Blood Rock is because this is such a sort of a sleeper record, you know? I mean, there's always something a little bit weird about Blood Rock. I think starting with the fact there were 6 guys in the band, you know what I mean? But they were as heavy as any of these guys. They maybe sound a little more dated than some of them. Like, you listen to a song like Sable and Pearl, or Castle of Thoughts, or Lucky in the Morning. I mean, and they really sound like the 60s weren't very long ago, you know? But the songs rock, and they're delivered with the sincerity. And same deal, it has that sort of feeling of stretching out, you know what I mean? This is one I might push back against as far as the end of an era, because they did make another studio record after this with this lineup, but that was Blood Rock USA, which might be my favorite Blood Rock record. So, you know, I don't have much use for Passage and Whirlwind Tongues after that, when they got the other singer and that shit. Although I haven't heard either of those records in fucking 25 years. Maybe I'd like them now, who knows. Anyway, point is, I never had a whole lot of use for those. I thought they were kind of lame, but Blood Rock still had one more great LP in them after that. And, some of these other guys did too, but, there was more change sort of involved, you know what I mean? So, like, Kiss, after Kiss Alive, I mean, they made Destroyer, right? But that's already pretty different from what they were doing on Kiss Alive, you know what I mean? That was them getting away from that Raw thing and getting into that Bob Ezrin thing, which is, you know. We'll look at one of those videos from a few months ago and I'll talk about Bob Ezrin, I guess. But. And then there's some sort of like, the rest of these are the ones that I think I kind of have the most trouble with. So like, this one. I love this era of Blue Oyster Cult. They made another double live in the early 80s, Extraterrestrial Live, ETL, I guess. Extraterrestrial Live, wasn't it called? I think I might actually like that package better. But this one has stuff off just like the first 3 records, which is my favorite stuff. They just fucking bring it down with the cover of Born to Be Wild. Look at that. It's twice I shit on the same song in this one video. Let's see if I can work him in a third time. Let's see if anyone else covers Born to Be Wild. Then we'll see if I can fucking fit it in a third time, right? But yeah, that and Buck's Boogie is a little bit too meandering, you know what I mean? And it kind of suffers a little bit, but this is still an enjoyable record. But this is one where I'd be like, you know, rather than get this one to sort of dip your toe in the water, you should probably just pick one of those first 3 studio records and go with it. Although this sounds more alive than those because they're produced so poorly, so I don't know. This one, I've kind of thought was not that great. Given the quality of the material that they were working with here, this is definitely an end of an era one, right? But, I mean, the Uli Roth era, they had so many great songs, and some of that stuff is represented here, but again, they fall into that stupid boomer thing of fucking Hound Dog and Long Tall Sally. I don't want to hear that shit. And then they do this fucking Kojo no Tsuki, which is just like pandering to their Japanese audience, and it's like when they're rocking on this record, they're really rocking. And I actually just bought this like a couple weeks ago. I've had it before and got rid of it because I didn't think much of it, but I wanted to give it another chance. And there are great songs in here, man. The version of Suspender Love is good. In Trance is really nice to hear live, man. Fucking Speedy's Coming, you know. But it feels like there's filler on it, and it's a shame because there was no need for the Scorpions to put filler on a fucking 3 record set, let alone a 2 record set, you know? Like, what was the point in that? So, I don't know, maybe I'll come around and tell you that, you know, that's the new greatest thing ever one of these days, but I wouldn't count on it. Brokus Helm Skullfucker next. I'm telling you, it's just fucking alphabetical here. Oh, there we go. So in a way, the one here that I find the most interesting, it's funny, you can tell this was cut a lot later, right? So this record, I would have no problem calling the most masturbatory of this stack, okay? Because when this record came out, they had 2 studio LPs, okay? So, what the fuck do? These couple songs off those 2 studio LPs. They introduce a new song, Kill the King, which would appear subsequently on Long Live Rock and Roll. It's a great intro for this too, right? But then they have Blues, then a whole side of Catch the Rainbow, then a whole side of Mistreated, which is a Deep Purple song, although it's weird hearing Ronnie James Dio singing David Coverdale's song, right? But somehow this record just manages to work. And I couldn't really explain why, but it just sort of flows together. In fact, on side 1, the way they do the Man in the Silver Mountain, they like do the song, then they have this blues thing, and then they do like a little reprise at the end. And in a way, that's the worst fucking thing. That's almost as bad as a medley. You know what I mean? But somehow, I can just sit and listen to this record, man. It's fun to listen to, you know what I mean? Like, somehow it just communicates that. It's like, it's not a tight show. It's like intense, the way like the UFO record is, with like all the songs being so great. Or the Deep Purple one, where even though it doesn't have as many great songs, when it's spread out, it's driving, you know what I mean? And like 10 minutes into the 20-minute version of Space Truckin', it's like just rocking harder and harder. This is sort of like the opposite of that in a way that's sort of really lazy double, you know what I mean? It's when you sort of put on when you're doing shit, and you're willing to sort of take in a 13-minute version of Mistreated because, you know, you're hanging out, you're just sort of digging it for what it is, you know, you're sort of in that Zen groove, and on that record, on that level, this record works really well, so yeah, all things being equal, I'd be inclined to shit on this record a lot, because it's incredibly pretentious, if you ask me, to put out a 2-record fucking live record when you only have 2 studio albums out. But somehow those motherfuckers managed to get away with it. So another one I have here is this one. And this is another one, Wishbone Ashman, that I haven't managed to connect with. And you know something? I like this record. It's good, but there's something about those first 3 Wishbone Ash records that's just really cozy. Like sort of like a mug of hot chocolate sitting by the fireplace type of cozy in the ski lodge, you know what I mean? Listening to Argus. And somehow that doesn't quite translate to this for me. And that might be on me, so I'm gonna have to report back on this one. And I didn't just get this, I've had it for a few years, but haven't spent as much time with it as I have with Argus either. But this record is cool, it's fair to the songs, and it's not really a bad package for getting into them, but somehow it doesn't feel like it has a personality the way these other ones all do. The other ones that I've shown tonight. So, in a way, that probably makes it the worst one. You know what I mean? Because, like, the Scorpions one has a personality. There are aspects of its personality that I don't necessarily like too much, but it's a personality, and I can work with that, you know? The Wishbone Ash Live just feels a little bit too ephemeral and a little bit too, I don't know, I don't say wishy-washy. That feels a little bit too strong, because I don't think it is wishy-washy, but just not quite committed in a way that I can't fully articulate. So I'd probably steer you away from that one, but I wouldn't steer you away from a copy of Argus. And I think that's actually it. You know, the other, like, there's a big hole in this presentation here. And, that's Thin Lizzy Live and Dangerous. And so, I'm actually going to dedicate my discussion of Thin Lizzy Live and Dangerous to Chromie D, Mr. Phil Barbecutioner. And that is, I'm not really going to talk about that record because I sold the motherfucker. Sorry, man. Actually, I don't hate that record. That's an okay record. It's kind of, you know what Live and Dangerous is like? It's like the pro forma Double Live record. You know what I mean? It's greatest hits compilation. All the performances are solid. I hate the saxophone player even more on that than I did on Bad Reputation, because it wasn't like their buddy was there. It was like, hey, come play a little lick. It was like they brought a fucking sax player on tour, and it's like, come on, dude. That's not who you are. You suck at that. Fuck you. Von Elmo gets away with a fucking sax player on tour, but then Lizzy. So yeah. I kept my copies of Jailbreak and Johnny the Fox, by the way. I have a few others that are still up for sale, and if they don't sell, that's fine. But Live and Dangerous is gone, and maybe someday I'll replace it, but I don't really see it happening. I just don't feel like it serves a whole lot of purpose, that record. So, anyway. So look at that, I brought Chromie down again. Here, let me say one more negative thing about No Remorse Records, or no, Cult Metal Classics, a label I really love. This is a terrible reissue. If you're gonna do a fucking badass rarity of a 45, like the Sacrifice from Sweden, you fucking do like a like HTML 1.0 quality art for it to put. I mean, this guy looks so awesome, right? The guy on the original record. Look at those teeth and shit. He's plenty. Instead, they fucking do this horse shit, and then it's like remastered. And if you didn't get like the special limited one, you don't get the original versions. It's like, fuck you, dude. Don't insult my intelligence. I love reissues because I love not spending hundreds of dollars on rare records. But whoever put this one together, dude, is a dick. And it pisses me off. And I've actually traded records with the Cult Metal Classic guys. Like, I'd be lying if I said I were tight with these guys, but I would vouch for their character, fundamentally speaking. But someone really fucked up over there on this Sacrifice record, man. I hope someone comes around and does a better job. I hope Cult Metal Classics comes around and does a better job and realizes their error, man. But this is just fucking crap. So, how's that? Alright. So that's going to be it, because this thing's going to fuck me when we get to 30 minutes. But after Brokus Helm is going to be Burner. Oh shit, we could do it if we had another 30 seconds, but we don't. Thanks for watching.